Welcome to Fault Lines.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe.
Chapter 1. When the ground stops moving. The portal sealed behind them with a sound that was felt more than heard. A low, settling resonance that vibrated through stone, steel, and bone alike. The last shimmer of inter-realm light collapsed inward, leaving the arrival chamber of the workshop exactly as it had been moments before. Solid. Heavy. Earth. Gunnar paused half a step beyond the threshold, letting the weight of the realm settle back onto him. Earth always did that. It didn't flow around you like Alfheim or Hum with layered intent like Concordia. It pressed down. Gravity here was honest and unforgiving, the kind that reminded you where you stood and what you were responsible for. Alpha stepped through immediately after him, massive paws striking the stone floor with a soft, deliberate thud. The dire wolf shook once, as if resetting his balance, then lifted his head and scented the air. Familiar, safe, home-adjacent, at least. Aeliana emerged last, the staff of realms dimming as its crystals recalibrated to Earth's ley lines. The faint glow faded to a resting pulse, authority momentarily set aside in favor of presence. Her expression was calm, but Gunnar could read the tension beneath it. Diplomacy was never finished. It only paused long enough to breathe. No alarm sounded, no one rushed in. The workshop functioned the way it always did. Quietly ready, prepared for crisis but never surprised by it. Gunnar reached up and keyed his comm. "Dezera," he said. "I need a meeting. Pack leadership. Add Region, Sophia, and Rose. War room. Now." There was no hesitation on the other end. "Copy," Dezera replied. 5 minutes. Gunnar didn't slow as they moved down the corridor. Alpha stayed close at his side, a living presence that shifted the space around him without effort. Aeliana walked just behind, her stride unhurried but purposeful. "You're moving fast," she said. "I'm moving before this spreads without us in the room," Gunnar replied. "Mirkdusk was only the first reaction." Aeliana inclined her head slightly. She didn't disagree. The war room. The war room was already alive when they entered. Soft, tactical lighting illuminated the central table, where layered projections hovered. Earth geography overlaid with realm borders, ley lines intersecting in places that no mundane map could account for. Status indicators pulsed quietly where portals had recently been used. Data scrolled at the periphery, waiting to be noticed. Darren was there first, leaning against the far wall with arms crossed, posture casual in the way that only came from absolute readiness. His eyes flicked briefly to Alpha, then back to Gunnar, already tracking mood as much as movement. Eli stood near one of the side consoles, fingers moving as she dismissed a data feed. Her attention shifted immediately to Aeliana, then to the staff cataloguing changes she didn't yet voice. Dezera took her place at the table without comment, expression neutral but focused. This was her space. Decisions happened here. The door opened again. Regin entered like she always did, without apology, without hesitation. Her colonel's bearing filled the room instantly, gaze sharp and assessing. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "This better be important," she said. Not a complaint. A statement of expectation. "It is," Gunnar replied. Sophia followed a moment later, tablet in hand, eyes already scanning the room. She remained standing, as she preferred, positioning herself where she could see everyone at once. Information flowed better that way. Then Rose arrived. She didn't rush. She never did. Rose leaned into the doorway, arms crossed loosely, weight settled into one hip. Her eyes moved in a slow circuit. Gunnar, Aeliana, Alpha, the table, the projections. She absorbed the atmosphere before committing to it. "Well," she said lightly, "this feels like one of those meetings." Gunnar waited until the door sealed shut. No guards, no observers. What happened here stayed here. "The Mirkdusk prisoners are home," he said without preamble. "Publicly. Treaty signed. Acknowledged. Regent's eyebrow lifted. You didn't go quiet with it. No, Aeliana said. We didn't. Rose's mouth curved into a thin smile. Good. Quiet agreements rot. Loud ones force accountability. Sophia's fingers paused over her tablet. Which means every other realm is already running projections. Exactly, Gunnar said. Alfheim is staging healers and reception teams. Concordia is preparing statements. Atherin hasn't responded yet. Of course they haven't, Rose murmured. They hate being second. Aeliana stepped forward, placing both hands on the table. The projection shifted at her touch, reorganizing itself into clean columns, names, conditions, realm of origin. 100 conscripts, she said, all taken by Black Dawn, all abandoned. Returning only Mirkdusk's people turns this into a favor. Returning all of them turns it into precedent. Regent crossed her arms. You're setting a standard. Yes, Aeliana replied, deliberately. Silence followed. Not resistance. Consideration. Darren broke it first. Someone's going to see that standard as a threat. They already do, Gunnar said. That's not a reason to stop. Rose pushed off the doorway and moved closer, heels clicking softly against the stone floor. So, she said, you're forcing every realm to choose between responsibility and denial. Publicly. Yes, Gunnar said. And after that, Rose continued, you plan to get them all in the same room. Aeliana met her gaze. Concordia, neutral ground. Rose let out a quiet breath, not amusement, appreciation. That's ambitious, she said, and incredibly dangerous. Alpha shifted beside Gunnar, a low, steady presence, not a growl. Agreement. That's why you're here, Gunnar said, looking directly at Rose, because once we announce that meeting, someone will try to fracture it before it ever happens. Rose's smile faded just enough to be honest. They always do. And you'll see it coming, Gunnar continued. Or you'll make sure I do. Rose studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, she said. I'll wake up the quiet parts of my network. Regent exhaled slowly. You realize this stops being an operation and starts being history. Gunnar didn't look away from the table. It already is, he said. We're just choosing whether we write it or react to it. The room settled into a new kind of stillness. Not uncertainty. Commitment. Aeliana straightened, the faint glow of the Staff of Realms reflecting softly off the stone. Then we move forward, she said. All of us. No half measures. Alpha lifted his head, golden eyes steady. And somewhere, far beyond the walls of the workshop, the ripples of that decision began to spread. Chapter 2. Neutral ground has a price. Rose didn't speak right away. She rarely did when the room was still busy agreeing with itself. Gunnar watched her from across the table, familiar enough with her habits to recognize the moment she decided to intervene. She shifted her weight slightly, uncrossed her arms, and pushed away from the wall with deliberate ease. That meeting you're planning? Rose said. The big one. Concordia. Flags. Councils. History books. Aeliana inclined her head. Yes. Rose shook her head once, not dismissive, cautionary. Too soon. The words settled into the room heavier than an argument. Regent frowned. You just said... I know what I just said, Rose cut in mildly, and I stand by it, eventually. But right now, you don't need a summit. You need a pressure test. Sophia looked up from her tablet. Explain. Rose walked toward the table, fingertips brushing the edge of the projection as if it were a physical thing. Right now, everyone is being very polite, she said. They're responding to the idea of cooperation. That changes the second they're forced to sit across from each other without layers of ceremony to hide behind. Darren snorted quietly. Sounds like my kind of party. Rose ignored him. You want to know who's serious, she continued. Who's bluffing, who's stalling, and who's already looking for exits. You don't learn that in a grand hall with speeches prepared 3 weeks in advance. Aeliana's gaze sharpened. Where would you suggest? Rose smiled then, not warmly, knowingly. The Shadow Realm bar. The reaction was immediate. Sarah straightened slightly. Regent's eyes narrowed. Sophia went very still. Gunnar didn't move. Everyone knows it, Rose said. Everyone knows what it means. Neutrality isn't a promise there, it's enforced. No posturing, no threats, no leverage except what you bring through the door. Regent crossed her arms. You're suggesting we invite realm representatives into a dive bar. I'm suggesting we invite people, not delegations, Rose replied. 1 or 2 from each realm. No titles beyond what they carry themselves. No public record. No declarations. She looked directly at Gunnar. They'll show you who they are when they think it doesn't count yet. The war room was quiet. Alpha shifted beside Gunnar, tail flicking once, sensing the change in tone. This wasn't planning anymore. This was strategy. Aeliana broke the silence. The bar isn't just neutral, it's exposed. No illusion of safety beyond the rules themselves. Exactly, Rose said, and everyone who walks through that door knows the rules are real. Sophia tapped her tablet once. From a security standpoint, it's actually sound. Wards, enforcement, limited access, and Grimm doesn't play favourites. Grimm doesn't play anything, Darren muttered. Rose's eyes flicked to Sophia. It also lets us control the guest list. No entourages, no armies waiting just out of sight. Regent exhaled slowly. This would be unofficial. Yes, Rose said. And deniable. If it goes badly, it never happened. If it goes well, it becomes the foundation for your Concordia summit. Gunnar finally spoke. And if someone refuses to attend? Rose shrugged lightly. Then you just learned something valuable before betting the future of the alliance on them. Aeliana studied the projection, then dismissed it entirely. The room felt smaller without the hovering data, more intimate. The bar exists outside formal authority, she said thoughtfully. Yet it is respected across realms. Rose nodded. Because it's one of the few places that actually keeps its promises. Gunnar looked at Alpha, then back to the table. 1 meeting, he said. Limited attendance, no announcements. And no weapons, Rose added. Grimm will insist. Aeliana smiled faintly. As he should. Regent tilted her head. You realise if this works, it shifts power away from councils and toward places like that. Rose's expression didn't change. Power shifts whether you plan for it or not. This way, you at least get to watch it happen. Gunnar nodded once. All right, he said. We do it your way. Rose's smile returned, sharper now. I'll handle invitations, she said. Quiet ones. Alpha let out a low huff, settling. The decision was made. Somewhere between realms, in a bar that existed because war had failed too many times, neutrality prepared to be tested again. Alpha's low huff faded, the sound settling into the room like punctuation. No one spoke right away. That, more than anything else, confirmed the decision. When people stopped arguing and started calculating, it meant they understood what had just shifted. Regent was the first to break the quiet. Timeline, she said, practical as ever. If this is happening, it can't linger. The longer word doesn't spread, the better. Agreed, Aeliana replied. Delay invites interference. Rose didn't look up. She was already thinking several moves ahead, weighing routes, personalities, and the cost of every silence. 2 days, she said, long enough to move people without rushing. Short enough that nobody has time to sabotage it properly. Darren snorted softly. That's an optimistic way to put it. Rose's mouth curved just slightly. I didn't say they wouldn't try. I said they wouldn't be ready. Gunnar leaned back against the table, folding his arms. He looked at each of them in turn, measuring not agreement but resolve. 2 days, he said. Shadow Realm bar. Supernatural side only. No announcements. No entourages. And no improvising, Regent added. Everyone sticks to what they're there to do. Rose finally lifted her eyes. They will? Or Grimm will remind them why that place exists. Aeliana inclined her head. I'll remain available, but I won't interfere unless asked. This needs to stand on its own. Gunnar nodded once. Good. He looked back to Rose. This is yours, he said. Not a request, not a challenge, acknowledgement. You coordinate, you invite, you decide who crosses that threshold. Rose met his gaze, expression unreadable but intent, sharpened to a fine edge. I know, she said, and I won't bring anyone through that door who doesn't understand what it costs. Silence followed again, heavier this time. Not doubt, acceptance. Gunnar straightened. Then we're done here. No one objected. The meeting broke without ceremony, each of them already carrying the implications of what they'd agreed to. 2 days wasn't much time. It was enough. And somewhere between realms, in a bar that existed because war had failed too many times, neutrality waited, unchanged, unmoved, and very aware it was about to be tested again. Chapter 3. The Weight of Neutral Ground. The Shadow Realm. Bar looked the same as it always did from the street. That was the point. A tired sign. Brick that had seen too many winters. Windows that reflected just enough light to keep people from wondering what they didn't need to know. To the human eye, it was a place you stopped into by accident and forgot on purpose. Rose didn't slow as she crossed the threshold. The door shut behind her with a sound that wasn't quite final, and the world shifted. Not dramatically, not violently, but decisively. The air thickened. Depth unfolded where none should exist. The hum of layered wards settled over her shoulders like an old coat she hadn't realized she missed. Silas was behind the bar, polishing a glass that was already spotless. He didn't look up right away. Didn't think I'd see you tonight, he said, voice even, unhurried. You always say that, Rose replied, faint amusement threading through her tone. And you're always wrong. That earned a small huff from him. Not a laugh. Silas didn't waste those. He glanced up then, eyes sharp but familiar, and whatever tension he'd been carrying eased just a fraction. You look tired. I am, Rose said, which means I didn't come for nostalgia. Figures. She moved past the bar without asking. No need. The door to Silas's office sat exactly where it always had, tucked into a corner that didn't exist unless you knew to look for it. The wards recognized her and parted without comment. Silas followed, setting the glass aside. His office was small compared to the rest of the bar's impossible interior. Stone walls, a heavy desk scarred by age rather than damage, shelves lined with ledgers that weren't books so much as promises written down to be remembered. A single lantern burned low, its light steady and warm. Rose didn't sit. She went straight to the cabinet behind the desk, opened it, and pulled out a bottle wrapped in old sigils and newer dust. She didn't ask permission. She never had. Silas watched her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. That's not for guests. I'm not a guest, Rose said. She poured 2 tumblers. The liquid caught the lantern light, deep and amber, the kind of liquor that had never known haste. She set them both on the counter between them, the sound soft but deliberate. Only then did she meet his eyes. Silas took his glass but didn't drink. That bottle's for bad days, he said. Rose picked up hers, rolling the weight of it in her hand. Then you should be grateful I didn't bring worse news. He studied her for a long moment. Say it. She didn't preface, didn't soften. That wasn't how they worked. I need the bar, Rose said. Not the front, not the human layer. The real one. Full neutrality. Grim on the door. Your rules. Silas didn't react. That was worse than anger. For what? He asked quietly. A meeting, Rose replied. Small. Controlled. Unofficial. The kind that either prevents a war or guarantees one later. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Who? He said. Rose took a sip. The liquor burned, steady and honest. She welcomed it. People who matter, she said. People who don't usually sit in the same room unless something has already gone wrong. Silas finally drank. Once. Then he set the glass down untouched afterward. "You know what this does," he said. "You know what it paints on my back?" "Yes," Rose said, no hesitation. "That's why I came myself." Silas exhaled slowly, gaze drifting past her to the wall where old sigils pulsed faintly, reminders of promises kept and broken. "How long?" he asked. 2 days, Rose said. "No announcements, no crowds, no posturing. In and out." "That's optimistic." "I didn't say safe." Silas looked back at her then. Really looked. At the lines fatigue had etched into someone who never let herself stop moving, at the steadiness beneath it. "And if it goes bad," he said. Rose met his gaze without flinching. "Then it goes bad here, under rules that hold, not somewhere weaker." Silas was silent for a long time. Finally, he picked up his glass again, lifted it slightly. "You're asking me to let history through my door," he said. "I'm telling you it's already knocking," Rose replied. "I'd rather it not kick it in somewhere else." Silas took another drink, longer this time. When he set the glass down, the decision was already made. 2 days, he said. Grim enforcers, no exceptions. "Of course," Rose said softly. "And Rose," he added. She paused at the door. "If this turns the bar into a battlefield," he said, "I won't forgive you." Rose allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "If it does, I won't forgive myself." That was enough. She left him there with the lantern and the ledgers, and the quiet weight of neutrality preparing to be tested once again. Chapter 4. What Still Stands. Evelyn was halfway through the same page for the third time when she realized the house was restless, not loud, not alarming, just awake. She lowered the book slightly, fingers still marking her place, and leaned back into her favorite chair by the front window. The chair had survived the attack, so had the window somehow, though both had been repaired with a care that bordered on reverence. The late afternoon light slanted across the room, catching in the subtle ward lines woven into the moulding. You only saw them if you knew where to look. Evelyn did. The floorboards gave a soft, familiar creak. Not settling. Anticipating. Evelyn frowned. The house didn't do that for weather, or traffic, or random pedestrians passing outside. It reacted to intent, to presence, to people who mattered. She closed the book slowly. "All right," she murmured, more to the space than to herself. "What are you feeling?" The wards along the walls shifted, not flaring, just aligning, like something drawing a breath after holding it too long. The air warmed by a degree. The faint hum she'd come to associate with contentment threaded through the room. Evelyn's heart picked up. "No," she said softly, already standing. "You're not serious." She took a few steps toward the front hall, bare feet quiet against the wood. The house responded, lights brightening just a touch, shadows pulling back from the corners. It wasn't defensive. It was welcoming. That was new. The lock turned. Evelyn stopped short, every instinct snapping into place even as the wards confirmed what her mind was still catching up to. The door opened. Rose stepped inside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house did, though. Not with words, but with motion. The tension Evelyn hadn't realized she was carrying eased out of the walls. The wards settled fully, like a sigh finally released. Somewhere deeper in the structure, a protective lattice disengaged from high alert to watchful calm. Rose paused just inside the threshold, one hand still on the door, as if she felt it too. "Well," she said quietly, eyes lifting to take in the room, "you fixed the south corner." Evelyn let out a breath that was half laugh, half relief, and crossed the space between them in 3 quick steps. She stopped herself from hugging Rose at the last second, settling instead for planting both hands on Rose's arms, solid, grounding. "You're late," Evelyn said. "You missed dinner, and the house has been sulking for weeks." Rose's mouth curved, something genuine breaking through the layers she wore everywhere else. "I had to make sure the world didn't fall apart first," Evelyn snorted. "Naturally." She finally pulled Rose into a brief, fierce embrace. The house seemed to approve. The warmth deepened, subtle but unmistakable. When they stepped apart, Evelyn gestured toward the living room. "Sit, before you collapse. That chair's still yours." Rose glanced at the chair, then back at Evelyn. "You kept it." "I told you I would." Rose nodded once and moved toward it, lowering herself carefully like someone relearning gravity. She rested her elbows on her knees for a moment, eyes closed, breathing in. "Silas rebuilt the bones," Rose said. "But this feels right." Evelyn smiled, soft and tired and proud. The house just needed time, and someone to listen. Rose opened her eyes, meeting Evelyn's gaze. "I always knew you'd be the one to bring it back." Outside, the city went on as it always had, unaware of the quiet reunion unfolding inside a brownstone that had survived war, betrayal, and loss. Inside, the house held its people close, and for the first time in a long while, Rose was home. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She crossed the room instead, moving toward the narrow cabinet tucked beneath the rebuilt staircase. The wards there were lighter now, settled into a quiet familiarity. She knelt, reached past newer bottles, and drew out one wrapped in faded cloth. Rose noticed immediately. "You kept it," she said, softly this time. Evelyn smiled over her shoulder. It was the only one that didn't shatter. Figured the house was trying to tell us something. She set the bottle on the counter and worked the cork free with careful hands. The sound echoed just a little too loudly in the quiet room. She poured 2 glasses, the wine dark and rich, catching the light like it remembered what it was meant for. Evelyn handed one to Rose before taking her own. "For later," Evelyn said, which apparently finally showed up. Rose accepted it, fingers lingering on the stem. She didn't drink yet. They sat. The house seemed to lean in, not intruding, just aware. After a moment, Rose exhaled and let the silence break. "I'm setting up a meeting," she said. "No preamble, no softening. Neutral ground. The kind that only works if everyone involved understands what neutrality actually costs." Evelyn took a slow sip, listening. "It's not a summit," Rose continued. "No councils, no spectacle, just representatives. People who can sit in a room where violence isn't an option and still tell the truth." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "That narrows it." "It does," Rose agreed. Evelyn set her glass down. "So you're not looking for leaders?" Rose shook her head. "I'm looking for survivors. The ones who've already seen what happens when systems fail." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, considering. "Then you don't want anyone who needs to win, or anyone who thinks they're owed something just for showing up." "No," Rose said, "I don't." "And no one who treats neutrality like a pause before the next move," Evelyn added. "They'll just break it the moment it stops favouring them." Rose's mouth curved faintly. "That's the problem. Most people think restraint is temporary." Evelyn met her eyes. "It isn't. It's a skill." The house shifted, a low hum threading through the walls, as if in agreement. Evelyn gestured with her glass. "You'll want people who already know what it's like to walk away from power, or at least to survive losing it." Rose finally drank. The wine was exactly as she remembered. Steady, grounding. "That's what I was afraid you'd say," she murmured. Evelyn smiled, not unkindly. "You didn't come here to be reassured." "No," Rose said. "I came here to make sure I wasn't lying to myself." They sat with that for a moment, the weight of unspoken names hovering just out of reach. Evelyn broke the silence gently. "Whoever you invite, make sure they can live with what they hear, and with what doesn't get said." Rose nodded once, decision settling in behind her eyes. "I will," she said. The house quieted again, watchful but calm, as if it understood that something had just been set in motion. And this time, it wasn't breaking. It was choosing who would be allowed to try. Evelyn studied Rose over the rim of her glass for a moment, then spoke again, softer but sharper. "You know," she said, "every time people say this might prevent a war, it usually just means we're hoping it's someone else's turn to bleed." Rose didn't bristle. She smiled faintly. "You're not wrong." "I hate that I'm not," Evelyn replied, then let the moment pass. She glanced toward the back of the house, toward the stairs that led down. "There's something else." Rose followed her gaze. "That sounded like trouble." "It is," Evelyn said. "The annoying kind. The wards in the basement. There's a section that won't settle. Every time I reset them, they push back. Not aggressively, just stubborn." Rose's expression shifted, focus sharpening. "Where?" "The east corner," Evelyn said. "Old stone. Older than the rest of the foundation. I thought it was damage from the attack at first, but it's not. It's been there longer than us." Rose stood, already moving. "Show me." The basement was cooler, quieter. The rebuilt sections felt clean, cooperative. New stone, new bindings, all aligned to the house as it was now. Then they reached the corner. The air changed, not hostile, not dark, just dense, like a memory that refused to be edited. Rose stopped a few steps short. The wards there weren't broken. They were entrenched, layered in a style she hadn't used in decades. She exhaled slowly. "Yeah," she said. "I remember this." Evelyn looked at her sharply. "You do?" Rose nodded, crouching slightly, fingers hovering just above the stone without touching it. "When I first took the house, this section fought me the same way. Wouldn't align, wouldn't yield." "What was it?" Evelyn asked. Rose's mouth curved, not amused. "The original owner." Evelyn blinked. As in a century ago," Rose said. "Maybe a little more. He wasn't powerful by today's standards, but he was thorough. Built the wards to outlast himself. Anchored them to intent, not blood." She straightened, rolling her shoulders. "Took me months to convince the house I wasn't there to erase him. Just continue." Evelyn frowned. "So it's not resisting me?" "No," Rose said. "It's testing you." She glanced around the basement, then back at Evelyn. "It's asking whether you're a caretaker or a temporary solution." Evelyn let out a slow breath. "No pressure." Rose smiled, genuine this time. "If it helps, it stopped fighting me the day I stopped trying to overwrite it." Evelyn tilted her head. "And did what instead?" "Listened," Rose said simply. "Adjusted around it. Let it keep one foot in the past." The stone seemed to ease just slightly, not compliant, but curious. Evelyn watched it, then looked back at Rose. "Figures. The oldest part of the house is the most stubborn." Rose nodded. "That's usually how it goes." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by old stone and older intent, the house holding steady around them. Above, the rest of the brownstone remained quiet, rebuilt, watchful, still standing, and still remembering. Chapter 5. What Still Breathes. The war room emptied without ceremony. Chairs slid back, tablets went dark, voices dropped to murmurs as people filtered out, each carrying their own version of what had just been agreed to. The air felt lighter, but only because something heavier had settled into place. Gunnar stood for a moment longer, one hand resting on the edge of the table. Alpha was already at the door. The wolf paused, ears flicking once, then turned and looked back at him. Not questioning, not waiting for orders, just checking. Gunnar gave a short nod. Alpha didn't hesitate after that. He padded out into the corridor, gait purposeful, tail held just a little higher than usual. There was only one place she ever went first, after tension like that. "The den," Aeliana said softly, falling into step beside Gunnar. He glanced at her, a faint crease easing from his brow. "Yeah." They followed. The further they moved from the war room, the more the atmosphere shifted. The stone corridors gave way to warmer spaces, the hum of wards changing pitch from alert readiness to something steadier, familiar, alive. Alpha pushed through the den doors without slowing. The sound hit them immediately. Soft whines, small breathy huffs, the unmistakable chaos of too many tiny bodies learning how legs worked. Alpha stopped dead just inside the threshold. Beta lay on her side in the center of the den, massive frame relaxed but watchful, golden eyes tracking every movement around her. The puppies were everywhere, climbing, tumbling, wrestling with ears and tails and each other in clumsy, enthusiastic bursts. One had managed to latch onto Beta's tail with determined teeth. Another was halfway up her shoulder, clearly convinced this was a mountain meant to be conquered. Beta endured it all with saintly patience. Alpha crossed the room in 3 long strides and lowered his head, touching his muzzle gently to Beta's neck. The tension he'd been carrying bled out of him in a visible wave. Beta huffed softly in greeting. The puppies noticed Alpha about half a second later. That was all it took. A chaotic surge followed, small bodies wobbling toward him with heroic determination. Alpha dropped immediately, folding himself down to their level, letting them swarm him without resistance. Gunnar leaned against the doorframe, arms crossing loosely. He hadn't realized how tight his chest had been until it eased. Aeliana stepped closer, her expression softening as she watched Alpha nudge one pup back toward Beta with careful insistence, then gently rescue another that had rolled too close to the edge of the den. "They're growing fast," Aeliana murmured. Gunnar nodded. "Too fast." One of the pups broke free from the pile and made a determined beeline toward him. It stumbled halfway there, corrected course, and continued with unwavering commitment. Gunnar crouched automatically, bracing as the pup collided with his knee and promptly toppled over. He exhaled a quiet laugh before he could stop himself. The pup righted itself and stared up at him, tail wagging so hard its whole body joined in. "Hey," Gunnar said softly. The pup answered by attempting to chew his boot. Aeliana smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I think you've been chosen." "Lucky me," he replied, though there was no heat in it. Alpha glanced over, eyes bright, then returned his attention to the den, content. The pack was here, safe, whole, still growing. For now, that was enough. Gunnar straightened slowly, taking in the room one last time before stepping back. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's let them settle." Alpha lifted his head, acknowledging the call, but didn't rise. Not yet. Gunnar and Aeliana turned away, the sounds of the den following them down the corridor. Life stubborn and warm, continuing despite everything else waiting on the horizon. The office door slid open with a soft, hydraulic whisper. Gunnar stopped on the threshold. For a heartbeat, his instincts told him something was wrong. Not danger. Change. The kind that unsettles before it explains itself. The furniture was different, not replaced with something flashy. Better. Cleaner lines. Heavier desk. Anchored. Scarred deliberately instead of by accident. The chair behind it wasn't ceremonial anymore. It was functional. Built for long hours and longer decisions. The walls had been repainted. Not bright. Not sterile. A deeper, steadier tone that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The room felt calmer, sharper. He stepped inside slowly. The liquor cabinet was gone, not emptied, removed. In its place, a recessed section of shelving held water, electrolyte packs, tea tins, protein supplements. Practical, intentional, impossible to miss. Gunnar didn't react immediately. He just stood there, one hand resting against the doorframe, letting the absence settle. Habit reached for something that wasn't there anymore, and when it found nothing, it stopped. He exhaled once through his nose. "Fair," he muttered. The old maps were gone too. In their place, the wall had been converted into an interactive display. Multiple panels, dark for now, seamless. He could already tell they were tied into live feeds, layered data, real-time tracking. Not history. Now. The war wasn't something you looked back at in this room anymore. It was something you watched. His gaze lifted. Centered beneath the pack's coat of arms, freshly restored and burnished, hung a single-framed photograph. His old team. Agency days. Younger faces. Hard eyes. The kind of people who didn't smile for cameras because they knew better. The frame was simple, unadorned, but the placement wasn't accidental. Not nostalgia. Foundation. Gunnar felt that one land deeper than the missing cabinet. She didn't erase where he came from. She anchored it. He crossed the room and stopped in front of the new weapons locker. It had been completely rebuilt. Reinforced alloys, updated enchantment interfaces, everything catalogued, balanced, accessible. This wasn't a locker you grabbed from in a hurry. It was a system designed by someone who expected him to live long enough to use it properly. Gunnar rested his cybernetic hand against the cool surface. No one else was there. No Clora. No explanations. No justifications waiting in the wings. Just the room. Aeliana stepped in quietly behind him, sensing the weight of the moment and not intruding on it. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Gunnar straightened and looked around one last time. The office didn't feel like it belonged to someone who might die tomorrow. It felt like it belonged to a command that planned to endure. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "She did good," he said at last. Aeliana's voice was gentle. "She did." Gunnar moved to the desk and set his hand on its surface, grounding himself in the present version of a place that had grown without him. Not replaced, strengthened. And for the first time since Alfheim, the weight on his shoulders shifted. Not lighter exactly, but shared. That would do. Gunnar turned from the desk and looked at Aeliana. Not like an alpha. Not like a commander. Like a man who had reached the end of a long road and wasn't sure what came next. "Maybe it's time," he said quietly. Aeliana met his gaze at once, instinctively alert. "Time for what?" "For Clora," he said. "To fully step into it, not just command, the bond, the rest of it." He gestured vaguely, as if the words were too heavy to hold properly. "She's ready. More than ready." Aeliana's expression softened, but she didn't answer immediately. "You taught her better than I ever could have," Gunnar continued. His voice was steady, but there was a fatigue beneath it that hadn't been there before Alfheim. "You got her into the Elven War College. You opened doors I wouldn't have even known existed. You did that." Aeliana shook her head gently. "I gave her opportunity," she said. "She earned everything else." She stepped closer, her presence warm and grounding. "But she still has much to learn." Gunnar frowned slightly. "She's led the pack through hell." "Yes," Aeliana agreed, and she did so brilliantly. Her gaze dropped for a moment, thoughtful. "But the bond between her and Omega is not complete. They are not blood-bonded, the way you and Alpha are." Gunnar stilled. "That bond isn't just power," Aeliana continued softly. "It's surrender. It's trust, taken all the way to the bone. She hasn't crossed that threshold yet." He studied her, then let out a slow breath. "Neither had I," he said, "until there wasn't a choice." Aeliana looked up at him then. Really looked. She saw it immediately. The way his shoulders carried weight differently now. The way his eye held questions it never used to. The quiet hesitation beneath his certainty. She reached out, resting a hand against his chest. "You almost died," she said, not accusing. Remembering. He didn't deny it. "I remember," he said. "Most of it." His jaw tightened. "I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm tired enough." Her hand pressed more firmly, anchoring him to the present. "I pulled you back," she said, "but you didn't come back unchanged." "No," he admitted. "I came back wondering how many more times I can ask people to follow me into this." Aeliana's voice was barely above a whisper. "And yet you still do." "Because they need someone to stand there," Gunnar said, "even when he's not sure anymore." She stepped closer, resting her forehead briefly against his. The connection between them hummed quiet and steady, not demanding, not overwhelming. "You don't question because you're weak," she said. "You question because you understand the cost now." He closed his eye. "For a moment," he said, "I thought if Clora took the rest of it, if she crossed that line, maybe I could finally set some of this down." Aeliana lifted his chin gently, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You are not done," she said. "Not with them, not with Alpha, and not with me." His breath hitched, just slightly. "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Silence settled between them, heavy but not unbearable. Gunnar leaned into her touch just enough to admit the truth without saying it aloud. She stayed, holding him there, letting him rest without letting him disappear. Outside the office, the pack moved on. Plans unfolded. The world kept turning. But in that room, for a few precious moments, the war was quiet. And that mattered. Gunnar stayed where he was, Aeliana's hand still resting against his chest, the hum of the office settling around them like it had decided not to interrupt. "There's something else," he said. Aeliana didn't pull back. She didn't rush him either. She just waited. "I don't think I've ever said it out loud," Gunnar continued, voice low, roughened by things he usually kept buried. "Not like this. Not without it being tied to a mission or a promise or a war." Her fingers tightened slightly, grounding him. "When Syrian nearly killed me, when I was lying there in Alfheim and I couldn't feel half my body." He swallowed. "The thought that scared me wasn't dying." Aeliana's breath caught, just barely. "It was that I might never come back to you," he said, "that I'd leave you holding all of this alone. The pack, the alliance, the mess I helped make." He finally looked at her then, really looked, the exhaustion no longer hidden. "I love you," Gunnar said. No flourish, no hesitation. "Not because you're strong, not because you're a guardian, but because when everything burns, you're the one thing that still feels solid." Aeliana's eyes softened, shining with something deeper than relief. She lifted her hand to his face, thumb brushing the scar along his jaw with reverent care. "You came back because you chose to," she said gently. "I helped, yes, but your will is not so easily extinguished." He leaned into her touch, forehead resting against hers. "I don't want to lead from a place where I'm always one step from losing you," he admitted. "Or them?" His voice hardened slightly. "Syrian is still out there. Whatever she's become, whatever Ultranacious left behind in her, she's a threat." Aeliana didn't argue, she knew better. "She's a threat to my family," Gunnar continued, "to the pack, to Alpha, to you." His jaw set. "And that means I'm not done. Not with her. Not with what she represents." Aeliana drew him into a slow, steady embrace, her arms firm around him, anchoring him to the present. "And neither are we unprepared," she said. "You and Alpha share a bond forged in blood. Syrian does not understand that kind of loyalty. She never has." Gunnar exhaled, tension bleeding out of him in small degrees. "I won't chase vengeance," he said, "but I won't ignore the threat either. I won't let it come for you." Aeliana pulled back just enough to meet his eye. "Then we face it together," she said, "as we always have, not because fate demands it, but because we choose it." For a long moment the office was silent. Then Gunnar nodded once, resolve settling into something calmer, steadier. "Clora can lead the pack," he said. "She's earned it. I'll stand where I'm needed most. With you. Making sure the alliance holds." Aeliana smiled softly, pride and affection intertwined. "That sounds like exactly where you belong." Outside the office, life moved on. Plans formed, threats lingered. Syrian was still out there. And someday, that reckoning would come. But not today. Today, Gunnar held what mattered most, and for the first time since he'd nearly died, the future didn't feel like something he had to face alone. Chapter 6. Passing the wait. The office door slid open. Clora stepped in first, already scanning out of habit. Darren followed a half-step behind, posture loose, eyes sharp. Both of them stopped. Gunnar and Aeliana stood near the centre of the room, close enough that whatever they'd been talking about hadn't fully let go yet. No consoles active, no maps up, just stillness. Clora felt it immediately. "Okay," she said slowly. "Either I missed something important, or this is the part where you tell us to sit down." Darren tilted his head, eyes flicking between them. "I vote important. You both look like people who just made a decision." Aeliana turned toward him. "Darren," she said evenly, "would you take me for a ride in your wolfmobile?" The room went quiet. Clora blinked. "Once?" Darren stared at her. Then he laughed. Not loud, not amused, just the sound of a man remembering pain. "You remember the last time you rode in one of those, right?" "Yes," Aeliana replied calmly. "You turned green." "I did not." "You absolutely did," Darren said. "You refused to admit it, which somehow made it worse." Gunnar cleared his throat. She held it together. Aeliana shot him a look. "You accelerated." "Enemy fire," Gunnar said mildly. "That does not require maximum suspension failure," she replied. Clora crossed her arms. "You're doing this on purpose." "Yes," Aeliana said without hesitation. Darren rubbed his face. "I just rebuilt the shocks." "Then this will be an excellent field test," Aeliana said serenely. He looked at Gunnar. "This is one of those conversations, isn't it?" Gunnar nodded once. "Yeah!" Darren sighed, already turning toward the door. "If you vomit in my vehicle, I'm billing the Alliance." "You may submit the paperwork to me," Aeliana said. Darren winced. "That's unfair." She stepped past Clora, resting a hand briefly on her arm. "You have done well," Aeliana said quietly. Then she was gone, already steering Darren down the corridor. His voice echoed back a moment later. "I swear, if you break something—" The door slid shut. Silence settled. Clora turned back to Gunnar. "All right," she said. "What just happened?" Gunnar didn't move to the desk. He stayed where he was, no barriers between them. "You saw the office," he said. Clora nodded cautiously. "Yeah." "You made changes," he continued. "Good ones. Necessary ones." She held his gaze. "The pack couldn't wait for you to heal." "I know," Gunnar said, "and you didn't pretend it could." Clora's jaw tightened slightly. "If this is about overstepping—" "It's not," he said gently. "It's about stepping fully into it." That stopped her. Gunnar took a breath, the kind that comes before something irreversible. "I want you in this chair," he said. "Not as acting alpha, not as backup, as leader of the pack." Clora stared at him. "You're not stepping away," she said carefully. "No," Gunnar replied. "I'm stepping where I'm needed now. With Aeliana, with the Alliance. Making sure what we build doesn't collapse the moment I'm not standing in front of it." She searched his face. "You trust me." "With my pack," he said. No hesitation. Clora exhaled slowly. "Then you don't get to second-guess me," she said. A corner of his mouth lifted. "I wouldn't dare." She straightened, shoulders settling into something heavier and more certain. "Then I'll lead," Clora said. "And I won't waste what you built." "I know you won't." Outside, the distant roar of the wolfmobile cut through the facility. Darren's voice echoed faintly down the hall. "I am driving carefully." Aeliana's reply drifted back, calm as ever. That would be wise. Gunnar and Clora shared a brief look. Leadership didn't pass with ceremony. It passed with trust. And that was exactly how it was meant to happen. Darren didn't slow until they were well clear of the office. Aeliana walked beside him without hesitation, long strides matching his, cloak already adjusted for movement instead of ceremony. The corridor lights shifted as they passed, the facility responding to intent the way it always did. "So," Darren said, glancing sideways, "before we get to the part where you regret all your life choices, any requests?" "Yes," Aeliana replied calmly. Do not die. He snorted. Ambitious. They turned the last corner and the space opened into the garage. The Wolfmobile dominated the bay. Fresh paint still gleamed under the overhead lights, darker now, more matte, less parade-ready, and more predatory. Panels were open along one side, tools laid out in careful rows. The smell of oil, ozone, and warm metal filled the air. Caleb slid out from beneath the vehicle on a low creeper, wiping his hands on a rag. Okay, he said, breathless but satisfied. That should do it. Darren stopped short. Please tell me you're done modifying it. Caleb grinned. Done for today. Aeliana's eyes traced the Wolfmobile with open interest. What did you add? Caleb gestured toward the rear assembly. Adaptive suspension feedback tied into the enchantment matrix. It'll compensate in real time. Terrain, speed, sudden evasive maneuvers. Darren raised a hand. You're describing exactly how we die. No, Caleb corrected. I'm describing how you don't flip it again. Again? Aeliana asked. Darren shot Caleb a look. We agreed not to bring that up. Caleb shrugged. She's about to be in it. Aeliana stepped closer, placing a hand on the Wolfmobile's frame. The enchantments responded immediately, a faint shimmer running along the metal like a creature recognizing a rider. It's eager, she observed. Caleb blinked. That's new. Darren stared. It's not supposed to be eager, Aeliana smiled faintly. Neither am I. And yet... Caleb pushed himself fully upright. Everything's green, systems synced. If you're going to test it, now's the time. Darren sighed, deep and theatrical. Of course it is. He opened the passenger side door and gestured with a flourish. After you, Guardian. Please keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times. Aeliana climbed in smoothly, already bracing herself with practiced instinct. Drive carefully. Darren shut the door. You say that like it's a choice. Caleb stepped back, raising a thumb. I'll be listening for explosions. The engine roared to life deeper than before, the sound vibrating through the garage. The Wolfmobile settled, suspension adjusting with a subtle predatory shift. Darren pulled it toward the bay doors. Aeliana fastened the restraints without comment. Last chance to change your mind, Darren said. She looked at him, composed, eyes bright. Proceed. The bay doors lifted. Daylight flooded in, and with a sharp burst of acceleration, the Wolfmobile shot forward, out of the garage, out of the facility, and straight into its very first test run. Caleb watched it disappear, listening to the engine note fade, then glanced at the empty bay. Huh, he murmured. That actually sounded stable. Outside, the roar echoed across the grounds, and somewhere down the road, Darren was already regretting every decision that had led to this moment. The Wolfmobile hit the access road like it had been waiting for permission. Acceleration slammed them back into the seats, the engine's growl deepening as the suspension adapted on the fly. Gravel snapped against the undercarriage, then vanished as the tyres found purchase, and held it. Aeliana's breath caught for half a second. Then she adjusted. She shifted her weight, braced through her core, hands gripping the side rails instead of the seat. The enchantments hummed louder, responding to her presence in a way Caleb absolutely had not designed for. Darren felt it immediately. Okay, he muttered. That's new. The road curved hard. He took it faster than he meant to, instinct overriding caution. The Wolfmobile leaned, corrected, and stayed upright. Barely. Aeliana didn't scream, didn't gasp. She leaned into the turn, eyes forward, already reading terrain instead of reacting to it. Last time she'd endured the ride. This time, she was riding it. You're not fighting it, Darren said half to himself. I learned, Aeliana replied evenly. You do not negotiate with momentum. Darren snorted. Tell that to my insurance agent. They crested a rise and the ground dropped away into rough, uneven terrain. Rocks, ruts, Old scars from training runs, and worse things. Darren hesitated only a heartbeat, then pushed harder. The Wolfmobile bounced, suspension flaring with arcane light as Caleb's modifications kicked in. The vehicle protested, then adapted. So did Aeliana. She closed her eyes briefly, not in fear, but focus. When she opened them, her senses widened, brushing the enchantment matrix woven through the chassis. The Wolfmobile noticed. The hum smoothed. The vibration shifted from chaotic to controlled. So Darren felt the difference through the steering column. "You're doing something," he said. "I am listening," Aeliana answered. "It wants to run clean." Darren barked a laugh. "Of course it does." They hit top speed. Wind tore at them, the world narrowing to motion and sound. For a moment, there was nothing else. No councils, no wars, no decisions waiting back in offices. Just velocity. Then Darren eased off and brought them down hard into a clearing, dust billowing around them as the engine dropped to a steady idle. Silence followed, broken only by ticking metal. Aeliana exhaled slowly. "That," she said, "was unpleasant." Darren glanced at her. "You didn't say terrifying." She looked back at him. "I did not need to." He studied her for a long second, then nodded once. Respect, clean and unspoken. "You're steadier than last time," he said. Aeliana smiled faintly. "Last time, I was a passenger." The engine idled on, patient. Darren leaned back in his seat. "You know," he said, "most people only get in that thing because Gunnar tells them to." "I did not," Aeliana replied. "No," Darren agreed. "You chose it." They sat there a moment longer before he turned the Wolfmobile back toward the facility. Behind them, the dust settled. Ahead of them, things were already moving. Eli didn't knock. She rarely did when something actually mattered. The office door slid open and she stepped in, tablet already active, bracer glove projecting a layered lattice of data in the air behind her. Gunnar and Clora both looked up at the same time. "That was fast," Clora said. Eli shook her head. "No, it was late." She didn't bother easing into it. "The Black Dawn control crystals weren't just stabilizers," Eli said. "They're routing keys." Gunnar straightened. "Routing what?" "Portals," Eli replied. "Multiple connections. One entry point. Many exits. Or rather, many false exits." She expanded the projection. A constellation of locations flared to life. Red markers. Too many of them. Clora frowned. "Those are all dead." "Exactly," Eli said. "That's the trick. They weren't using those portals. They were pointing at them." She tapped the air, and lines appeared, threading between the points like a spider web. "Think of it like this," she continued. "You step through a portal that looks local, reads local, feels local. Every scan says you're here." She paused, letting that settle. "But you're not. You're being routed somewhere else entirely." Gunnar's jaw tightened. "A proxy?" "Yes," Eli said. "A portal VPN. It masks origin, destination, and traffic flow. Anyone trying to track movement hits a graveyard of inactive gates and assumes the trail went cold." Clora let out a slow breath. "That explains a lot." "It gets worse," Eli said. She collapsed the outer nodes, leaving one point glowing at the center. "All of this logic has to live somewhere. The dead portals aren't doing anything. They're just addresses." "So where's the switchboard?" Gunnar asked. "The original portal," Eli said. "The source node. The first gate Black Dawn trusted enough to build the routing logic into. That's the only place I can see the real paths." "And you can access it," Clora said. Eli hesitated. "I can try, but if I connect from the outside, it's going to be noisy. If anyone's watching that gate, they'll know someone's poking around." Silence stretched for a moment. Then Gunnar nodded. "We'll plan for that." "There's more," Eli added, quieter now. "I want to take this to Rose." Clora glanced at Gunnar, then back to Eli. "Because of Draven." "Yes," Eli said. She trained under him. She understands how he thought, how he hid infrastructure inside misdirection. If anyone can spot the intent behind this design, it's her. Gunnar didn't hesitate. Do it. Eli blinked. That was fast. She's already hosting the meeting, Clora said. She's already inside this, whether she likes it or not. Gunnar crossed his arms. And if Black Dawn learned this trick from Draven's work, Rose deserves to know what shadows he left behind. Eli nodded once, satisfied. I'll brief her, she said. Quietly. She turned to go, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Eli added, this isn't a weapon problem. It's an architecture problem. Gunnar met her gaze. Then we're treating it like one. The door slid shut behind her. Clora looked at the still glowing projection, then at Gunnar. They didn't retreat, she said. No, Gunnar replied. They hid. And somewhere between realms, behind a portal everyone thought was dead, something very much alive waited to be noticed. Chapter 7. Consent. The workshop lights dimmed as Gunnar stepped inside. Not automatically, deliberately. Starbreaker lay disassembled across the central bench, not broken now, just waiting. Its pieces were laid out with surgical care. Barrel assembly, launcher housing, power lattice, the starlight gem cradle empty, its absence louder than any hum. This wasn't a weapons bay, it was an operating room. Alatheris stood at the head of the bench, hands clasped behind his back. Caleb hovered near the diagnostic station, already pulling up readouts. Eli stayed slightly off to the side, watching everyone at once, as she always did. Alatheris spoke first. We start with you, he said, not the weapon. Gunnar rolled his shoulder once and stripped back the sleeve on his cybernetic arm. The starlight circuits beneath the composite plating glimmered faintly, familiar and earned the hard way. I'm still in control, Gunnar said. Alatheris met his eyes. At every step, Caleb added, and the moment you say stop, we stop. No momentum, no sunk cost bravado. Gunnar gave a humorless huff. You think I'd let you bolt something into my arm without that? Eli's mouth twitched. We're thinking of us. Alatheris raised a hand, refocusing the room. Phase 1, he said. Palm node installation. A projection bloomed into the air, rotating Gunnar's cybernetic hand in clean, clinical detail. Existing starlight channels glowed softly, already mapped and well understood. We are not creating a new system, Alatheris continued. We are closing a loop that already exists. Your arm carries the lattice. The palm node is simply an authorization point. Consent made physical, Gunnar said. Yes, Alatheris replied. Exactly. Caleb moved in, tools precise, steady. The outer plating of Gunnar's palm separated with a soft mechanical whisper, revealing the underlying lattice. No pain, just pressure. The control rune was small, elegant, dangerous in its simplicity. This is the only place commands can originate, Caleb said. No external triggers, no remote access, no shortcuts. And no accidents, Eli added, pulling Jules' safety seals into view. Emergency dampening is layered across every conduit. Thought doesn't become command unless you mean it to. Gunnar watched the rune seat into place. Do it, he said. Alatheris guided the alignment himself, fingers careful, reverent. The rune locked in with a muted chime, starlight flowing around it like it had always been there. The workshop went still. Connection test, Alatheris said. Eli stepped forward. Don't do anything, just think. Open hand. Gunnar complied. The rune warmed, not hot, not invasive, just present. Caleb's console lit up. Signal received. No drift. Translator crystal remains idle, Alatheris confirmed. No command conversion. Safety seals holding, Eli said. No bleed-through. Gunnar opened and closed his hand slowly. It's quiet, he said. Alatheris allowed himself a small nod. Good. Quiet means control. They ran the test again, and again. Intent registered. Commands did not. Nothing fired. Nothing pushed back. Finally, Alatheris stepped away. Palm node integrated, he said. You are unchanged. Gunnar flexed his fingers once more, then looked at Starbreaker's disassembled form on the bench. That's the easy part, he said. Yes, Alatheris agreed. The rest is choice. Eli crossed her arms. We don't proceed unless you tell us to. Silence settled over the workshop. Starbreaker remained in pieces. The loop was open, but not closed. And for the first time since Atherin, Gunnar wasn't deciding how to win a fight. He was deciding how close he was willing to let violence live to his thoughts. Gunnar looked around the room. Let's do this. Alatheris slid the lower receiver across the bench toward Gunnar, careful, deliberate. No barrel, no launcher tube, no power feed, just the grip, trigger assembly, and the neural runic interface, housing exposed along its spine. This stays inert, Alatheris said calmly. No physical connection to the firing assemblies. We are only watching signal flow. Gunnar picked it up. The weight was familiar, comforting, in the way only something earned could be. He wrapped his hand around the pistol grip. The palm node warmed immediately, recognizing the interface. Eli stepped in beside him, tablet active, data streams already scrolling. I'm slaved into the translator crystal and the conduit junctions, she said. Anything you think, I'll see. Caleb leaned over her shoulder. Let's start simple. Alatheris nodded. Command test. 40mm launcher. Low intent. No aggression. Gunnar inhaled once. Arm the launcher. Dry fire. The palm rune pulsed. Eli's tablet chimed. Signal received. Command recognized. Routing. She frowned. That's not right. Before anyone could say anything else, a second signal lit up across the display. Not the launcher path, the neural engagement line. Eli's eyes widened. Hold! Gunnar! Don't! Too late. The neural runic interface fired. Not the weapon, him. Gunnar's cybernetic arm locked for a fraction of a second, starlight circuits flaring brighter than they ever had before. His grip tightened involuntarily, muscles responding to a command that had nowhere to go. He grunted, teeth clenched. That wasn't the launcher. Caleb swore. That's a feedback inversion. Alatheris was already moving. Kill the conduit! Now! Eli slammed a command into the tablet. Jules' safety seals engaged instantly, dumping the signal into dampening runes. The starlight glow collapsed. Gunnar sucked in a sharp breath and released the receiver, flexing his fingers hard as sensation returned fully. Silence crashed down over the workshop. Everyone looked at him. I meant to fire the 40, Gunnar said evenly. The interface fired me instead. Eli swallowed. The wiring between the translator and the conduit is reversed. The system interpreted engagement instead of deployment. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. If that had been fully connected, it would have bypassed the trigger entirely, Alatheris finished. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not. Thought would have gone straight into action. Gunnar looked down at his hand, at the palm node. At least now we know, he said. Eli nodded slowly. Yeah, and now I understand your concern a lot better. Alatheris took the lower receiver back and set it carefully on the bench, like it might bite if mishandled. This is why we test in fragments, he said. And why consent is not a single rune. It's a system. Gunnar flexed his cybernetic arm again. Everything responded normally, but the room felt different now. That was the weapon reaching inward instead of outward, Gunnar said quietly. That's the line I don't cross unless I'm sure. Eli met his gaze. We'll correct the inversion, separate the engagement and deployment logic completely. And add another safety layer, Caleb said. 2-step confirmation. Thought plus intent hold. Alatheris nodded. Agreed. Gunnar looked once more at Starbreaker's pieces spread across the bench. Good, he said. Because that? He nodded toward his palm. That was a warning shot. No one argued. Starbreaker stayed disassembled. And this time, everyone in the room understood exactly why. The corridors were nearly dark now, the facility settling into its late-night stillness. Most of the pack was down. Systems idled. Even the air felt slower. Gunnar walked beside Aeliana, the weight of the workshop finally ebbing now that there was nowhere left to stand guard. Neither of them spoke. When they reached her door, he stopped out of habit, already turning slightly as if to leave her there. That had always been the line. Unspoken. Respected. Aeliana didn't open the door right away. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. Not urgently, not pleading, just firm enough that he felt the decision being made without words. Gunnar looked at her. She met his gaze, eyes steady, calm, carrying everything she hadn't said all night. There was no command in it, no expectation, just an invitation offered once. He didn't pull away. Aeliana turned then, still holding his hand, and keyed the door open. The lights inside were low, warm, deliberately gentle. A space meant for rest, not vigilance. She stepped inside and led him with her. The door slid shut behind them, sealing out the hum of the facility, the unfinished weapons, the choices waiting for another day. Only then did she speak softly, as if naming the moment would break it. "You don't have to be alone tonight." Gunnar exhaled, something tight finally loosening in his chest. "I know," he said. She squeezed his hand once more, grounding, present. No armor, no rank, no alpha or guardian. Just two people who had stood too close to the edge and chosen, for this night at least, not to face it apart. And that was enough.
Don't forget to hit that like button.
And subscribe to stay updated.
We appreciate the support.